What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a few sort of, I don't know if you want to call them controversial, maybe some myths, maybe some, I don't know what you want to call it. But I want to talk about hand wound, scatterwind, like those terms that we hear thrown around a lot and the benefits of them, if it's a real thing, all that kind of stuff. And by way of that conversation, I'm also going to show you on our new Tonewinder CNC winding machine how we can actually make a more natural and actually hand wound pickup and replicate that with this machine. They sent me this machine to review and we did a couple of videos on it already, and I wanted to show you a really neat feature that I really love and I do use. So let's talk about pickup winding. Most of the pickups that you get in most guitars that you buy are done on a CNC machine. It's basically a big coil winder, but it's typically set up with, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 bobbins wide with a bunch of spools of wire, and it just runs on a program. And so you'll hear machine wound versus hand wound pickups. Now, if you've watched any of my videos in the past, you'll know that we have this Mojo Tone winder over here and some other winders before that. We've been doing this for 10 years, 11 years. And those are basically, we guide the wire onto the bobbin with my hand, right? What benefit does that have over just a machine that just runs at a particular rate? This gets into a little bit of crazy science. When you have two wires that lay next to each other, so let me grab a coil. When you have two wires that lay next to each other, what happens is there is a loss of energy across them. It's called capacitive loss, okay? We hear about it in guitar cables. We hear about it in all kinds of stuff. And so, especially in a passive guitar where there's no amplification happening at this point, right? This is just some wires laying next to each other. What happens is, there are frequencies that get lost when these two wires lay next to each other for a long period of time. Well, as you can imagine, if there is a mile of coil, I think it's about a quarter mile of coil wire on this coil, and they're all laying next to each other, and they're all a couple of hundredths of a thousandth of an inch apart. So we're talking about 0.0027 thickness of the wire, and then 0.0029, so what is that, 2/10,000ths of a inch thickness of the, I might have that wrong, but of the insulation. Anyway, really small insulation on this wire. So what can happen is if you have a bunch of it laying next to each other, which you do, right, like 10,000 winds on a P90, for example, you've got 10,000 winds of wire laying next to each other. And so what'll happen is if it's 100% lined up next to each other, then you will start to lose frequencies because they will literally, off-gassing is the wrong word, but that's sort of the term that I like to use because that's what happens. It escapes, basically more or less, it escapes or is drawn out of the wire into the other wire. But when that happens, some of it gets lost. Well, typically in a guitar pickup, what gets lost is high frequencies. And a lot of the dynamics and a lot of the clarity, which is something those two things I'm I take very seriously around here. It's like my most important thing that I love about Dylan pickups. And so doing it by hand is super important. In my opinion, I'm just going to say in my opinion, I'm just going to qualify that because there's going to be some ding dong in the comments who's going to say that this doesn't matter. But the science of it is that when you break up that perfect plane, so now you don't have two wires laying next to each other, now they're sort of on an angle, scattered, so they kind of go across each other like this, you kind of break up that capacitive loss or the potential for it. Now, it obviously scales the more winds you put on something, or in a guitar cable, the longer the cable is. We've heard it in a guitar cable. Well, the same thing happens in a pickup. So how do we get rid of that? Well, instead of just going back and forth and laying everything exactly perfectly all the whole time like this, super constant, we introduce some scatter in there. So basically, we vary the tension a little bit when possible, and we also vary, but more importantly, the traverse. So when I'm winding the pickup, and this thing's spinning around on the machine, and I've got this in my hand, I'm actually varying how fast it goes back and forth. So there is a certain number of layers on this, right? Layers of wire. There's also a certain number of turns per layer, because as you can imagine, if they lay side by side in here, you've got however many turns per layer, then it goes to the next layer and stacks up on the coil. So you vary the turns per layer by moving your hand back and forth. Well, on a machine, that's harder to do, but not impossible. The really good machines, you can actually program that in there. This machine's very interesting, this Tonewinder, because not only can you vary it, there's a setting on there where you can actually introduce scatter to it at programmed points. But one of the things you can do is actually emulate your hand. So I can actually go in here and we can make a pickup and we can turn this knob back and forth and we can vary the speed of the traverse just as I would do it with my hand, basically hand winding a pickup with the machine, record it, and then be able to duplicate it. Now the important thing about duplication in hand winding pickups is it's easy. Honestly, it's easy to make a pickup. Anybody can do it. We've done a bunch of classes and we've taught people how to wind pickups, and it's super fun. I actually love teaching people how to wind pickups. It's super fun. We've probably taught, 60 or so people how to wind pickups, and every one of those people has gone home with a pickup that worked and actually sounded pretty good. So it's something that anybody can do. Now the trick is this. The trick is, how do we make this duplicate so that all of these pickups sound exactly the same? That's the trick. And most importantly, how do we make them sound the same if they end up hanging next to each other? For example, if I sell this pickup to Bob and he lives in Alaska, and I sell this pickup to Gene and he lives in Illinois, and I sell this pickup and he lives, to Philip and he lives in Germany, right? It doesn't really matter if they sound the same, because they're never going to talk to each other. They're never going to reference those tones, A-B them next to each other, so it doesn't matter. But what if I sell this pickup, this pickup, this pickup, and this pickup to the same guitar builder? For example, when we send stuff to Texas Toast Guitars, and now they've got 3 or 4 guitars hanging next to each other on the wall in a store or for a custom builder or whatever, they've got to be consistent and they've got to sound the same across all of the pickups, right? There's this balance between maintaining consistency across the product line. We've made over 10,000 pickups now over the last 11 years or so. More than that, I think, actually. How do we keep them consistent? And how do we make sure that they're good, but we don't want them to sound like they came out of a machine? So this is a balance that you're constantly fighting with. So some stuff we'll make on that machine over there and do it 100% by hand. Some stuff we'll use this machine and we will program in our hand windedness to get all of those aspects. It's really important to make sure that we have consistency and quality along with this randomness that makes the stuff sound so good. So let me show you how it works. All right, so we're going to use some interesting features on this. There's a factor knob over here, and basically what this is going to do in this setting that we're about to use is it's going to move our traverse back and forth. So when you're hand winding a pickup, you have ultimate control over like how fast back and forth this thing goes. Well, if you put this in constant mode, you can just set the speed and it just does what it does. Like you can set it for a certain, layers per turn or whatever, but that doesn't give you the randomness that you want with a normal hand wound pickup. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our hand wound spin on this pickup. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come over here to new bobbin, and constant mode is the one that's just going to run it, right? Table mode is interesting because you'll be able to actually pick where it stops back and forth basically. Scatter mode, you can choose some set number. It's kind of semi-scattered actually because you preset it. But emulate mode is my favorite because what we're going to do is we're basically going to be able to use this knob over here and actually manually wind the pickup more or less. It's going to hold it at the right speed for us. So we've got our turns. This isn't one of my specs because I don't give my specs up on the internet, so this is just going to be a generic turn. We've got our base plate thickness, we've got our height of the coil, we've got our coil wire gauge, we've got our winding speed, and it says create clone bobbin, so we're in the create mode right now. So basically all we did was we just hit emulate and we put all this in here. So it says note, use knob for filling factor. So this knob is going to give us our traverse speed back and forth. So we'll go ahead and hit pre-start over here. All right, so it's going to pre-tension. All right, and now we're going to hit start and we're going to be able to use this knob to control the traverse like a normal hand wound pickup. So it's going back and forth very slowly. Now we can adjust this. So like, you know, we could probably go like our sort of normal rate of speed, and then we can throw some scatter in there. Slow it back down. And go to whatever rate of scatter back and forth that you want. And then whenever you want, you can speed it back up. And then slow it back down. Or you can just go at a constant kind of faster rate. I know a lot of people wind that way. And the cool part about this is the art of making pickups is the consistency. So when you finally get a scatter and a sound and everything that you want. Now there's a lot of people that are going to argue whether scatter is actually even a thing, that it actually matters. But I think it keeps capacitance lower in the coil and it gives you a lot more clarity. So it just depends though, because there's a couple of factors here. The tension of the wire also matters, as well as the scatter. So, which is, you know, these things that you can adjust. You can adjust the tension on the wire with this knob right here because there's these two felt pads that are going through it. And basically what it's doing, for those of you that are not familiar with this machine, let me add a little bit more in there, just because we're talking about this and having fun with it. You see how this plate, here, let me just get this off the tripod. And I'll just let that run for a second. You see how that plate is split in the middle? The wire goes from the top to the bottom right here, and it senses how much it squeezes together basically, and that is how it knows how much tension is on the wire. And so right now we're running at about 23 grams to 25 grams per wind, or 23 or 25 grams of tension on the wire. So now you can set this for however you want. You can manually just hand wind the pickup basically, with that thing being your hand, and leave your hand on this knob and do whatever you want here to get this thing however you want, until the pickup is done. All right, and now we have a completed coil. So the coil's done. So now we come back over here. So what we can do is once we go in here, then what we need to do is we need to change this field to clone, and then save it to the Strat menu. And now, when we come in here to load a bobbin, we will load this, and it will make the pickup that we made. And the end result is a pickup across our product line. It doesn't matter what you buy from us. We are going to have a couple of things. One, we're going to have a situation where no matter how much gain you put to the guitar, when you turn the volume down, it's going to clean up. When you turn it back up, it's going to get dirty again. You're going to have a nice dynamic range between there. The other thing is you're going to have really good pick attack. You're going to have a situation where when you pick harder, you'll be able to send an on the edge amp into breakup. The pick dynamics will soften up with your hands. If you don't know what these things mean, or if you've never experienced them yourself, it's something that you have to try and kind of learn and understand the feel of, but it's a thing and it's super fun once you really get it. And then the other thing is clarity across all the notes. So no matter how much gain you put on a guitar, you know, if you play through an EVH 6505 on the third channel, you should still be able to hear all the strings. It shouldn't just mush together. That's something that we really care about around here. So any of our pickups will do that. Any of them, all of them. If it doesn't do that, I don't sell it. So those are some things. And then clarity. I really care about clarity of the notes. If you are a person who doesn't use your tone knob, chances are you're going to be like, oh wow, these are pretty bright. Because we like not bright, but clarity. We don't want to lose the expression of our hands. We don't want any sort of muddiness. We want clarity, not treble, not tinniness, not like a cut your head off sort of Telecaster sort of thing. You know, bad Telecaster pickups will do that. Ours don't. Stratocaster pickups will do that in the bridge position. Ours don't. There's a balance. Putting the thought into this is exactly, I think, well, and a combination of other things, but that is really one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that gets us the sound that we want. So there you go. A little behind the scenes kind of stuff and a look at the Tonewinder. I'll leave a link to Tonewinder, I think it's Tonewinder.es, in the description. They're really neat. I really like them. I have really enjoyed using this machine. It gives me a dimension and a capability that I didn't have before. And so the consistency that comes from it's pretty awesome. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you in the next video. Oh yeah, like and subscribe. We have like 400 subscribers until 100,000. We're going to throw a little party, do a little online live stream thing and stuff because kind of a viewer appreciation sort of deal when that gets a little closer. So thanks for hanging out, and we will see you in the next video.